1 Samuel chapter 3, the calling of Samuel. Now the boy Samuel was in the service of Adonai under Eli. In those days the word of Adonai was rare. There was no visions breaking through. One day Eli was lying down in his place, and his eyes had grown dim, so that he could not see, and the lamp of God had not yet gone out. Samuel was lying down in Adonai's temple where the ark of God was. Then Adonai called Samuel, so he answered, "Here I am." Then he ran at Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." But he replied, "I didn't call you. Go back to sleep." So he went back down and laid down. Then Adonai called Samuel yet again. So Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." But he answered, "I didn't call, my son. Go back to sleep." Now Samuel has not experienced Adonai yet, since the word of Adonai has not been revealed to him. Adonai called Samuel again for the third time. So he got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." Then Eli perceived that Adonai was calling to the boy. So Eli said to Samuel, "Go back to sleep, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Adonai, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went back down and lay down in his place. Then Adonai came and stood and called us at the other time, "Samuel, Samuel." Then Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening." Then Adonai said to Samuel, "Behold, I am about to do something in Israel which both ears of everyone that hear will tingle. In that day I will perform against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end, for I have told him that I am about to judge his house forever for the iniquity that he knew about, because his sons brought a curse on themselves that he did not rebuke them. Therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house will never be atoned for by sacrifice or offering." Then Samuel lay down until the morning, when he opened the doors of the house of Adonai. But Samuel was afraid to tell Eli about the vision. Then Eli called Samuel and said, "Samuel, my son." "Here I am," he replied. "What is the word that he has spoken to you?" He said, "Please don't hide it from me. May God do to you, and even more if you hide anything at all from me that he spoke to you." So Samuel told him everything, and he hid nothing. Then Eli said, "He is Adonai. May he do what is good. May he do what is good in his eyes." So Samuel grew up, and Adonai was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. Then all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew what Samuel was entrusted as a prophet of Adonai. Adonai started to appear once more in Shiloh, for Adonai revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of Adonai. 1 Samuel chapter 4, defeat and loss of the ark. So it was that the word of Samuel went forth to all Israel. Now Israel went out against the Philistines in battle. They camped at Ebenezer, while the Philistines camped in Aphek. The Philistines drew up in a battle array to meet Israel. And when the battle was fought, Israel was defeated before the Philistines, who killed 4,000 men on the battlefield. When the people came back to camp, the elders of Israel asked, "Why did Adonai bring defeat on us today before the Philistines? Let's fetch the ark of the covenant of Adonai from Shiloh, that he might come among us and deliver us from the hand of our enemies." So the people sent to Shiloh, and from there they carried the ark of the covenant of Adonai Zavat, who sits at the cherubim. Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. Now when the ark of the covenant of Adonai entered the camp, all Israel shouted with a great shout, so that the ground resounded. When the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, they wondered, "What is this noise of a great shout in the camp of the Hebrews?" When they realized that the ark of the covenant had come into the camp, the Philistines were afraid, for they said, "God has come into the camp." So they said, "Woe to us, for nothing like this has ever happened before. Woe to us! Who will deliver us from the hand of this mighty God? This is the God that struck down the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. Be strong and conduct yourselves like men, O Philistines, or else you will become enslaved to the Hebrews as they have been to you. Be like men and fight." So the Philistines did fight, and Israel was defeated. They fled every man to his tent, so slaughter was very great, as 30,000 of Israel's foot soldiers fell. Moreover, the ark of God was captured, and Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, died. Now at that time a man named Benjamin ran from the battlefield and came to Shiloh, with his clothes torn and dust on his head. When he arrived, behold, Eli was sitting in his seat by the wayside watching, for his heart was trembling for the ark of God. When the man arrived to announce it in the town, the entire town cried out. And when Eli heard the noise of the outcry, he asked, "What's this noisy commotion?" So the man rushed and came and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were fixed in a blind stare. And the man said to Eli, "I am one coming from the battlefield. I escaped from the battlefield today." "What is happening, my son?" he asked. And the messenger answered and said, "Israel fled before the Philistines, and there has also been a great slaughter." among the people. Also, your 2 sons died, Hophni and Phinehas, and the ark of the covenant God was captured. As soon as he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backward from his seat beside the town gate. His neck broke and he died, for he was old and heavy. He had judged Israel for 40 years. Now his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was with child and about to deliver. When she heard the report that the ark of God was captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she crouched down and gave birth because she was seized with labor pains. As she was dying, the woman attended to her and said, "Don't be afraid, for you have brought forth a son." But she did not respond or take it to heart. Then she named the child Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel because of the capture of the ark of God and because of her father-in-law and her husband." So she said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been taken." 1 Samuel chapter 5. The ark afflicts the Philistines. Now the Philistines had taken the ark of God, and they brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. The Philistines took the ark of God and brought it to the temple of Dagon and placed it beside Dagon. But when the Ashdodites arose early the next morning, to everyone's surprise, Dagon had fallen on his face on the ground before the ark of Adonai. So they took Dagon up and put him back in his place. But when they arose early the following morning, surprisingly, Dagon had fallen to his face on the ground before the ark of Adonai, and the head of Dagon and both palms of his hands were cut off on the threshold. Only Dagon's trunk was left on him. That is why, to this day, neither the priests of Dagon nor any who enter Dagon's house will tread on Dagon's threshold in Ashdod. Then the hand of Adonai was heavy upon the Ashdodites, ravaging them and afflicting Ashdod and its vicinity with tumors. When the men of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, "The ark of the God of Israel must not stay with us, for his hand has dealt harshly against us, as well as our god Dagon." So they sent word and gathered all the lords of the Philistines to them and asked, "What will we do with the ark of God of Israel?" They replied, "Let the ark of the God of Israel be carried over to Gath." So they carried the ark of the God of Israel over. But it came about that after they had carried it around, that the hand of Adonai was against the city, causing very great panic, as he struck the people of the city, from the youngest to the oldest, so that the tumors broke out on them. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. But it came about, as the ark of God came to Ekron, that the Ekronites cried out, saying, "They've brought around the ark of God of Israel to kill us and to kill our people." So they sent word and gathered all the lords of the Philistines and said, "Send the ark of the God of Israel away. Let it go back to its own place, so it won't kill us and our people." For a panic of death was throughout the entire city, as God's hand was very heavy there. The people who did not die were afflicted with tumors, so that the outcry of the city went up to heaven.